Annals of the Jinns, Part 5, The Tomb of the God, by Robert H. Barlow. For 4 days, the band of explorers from Fur had been excavating the ancient and immemorial tomb of Krang on the edge of the desert. The sands had been blowing ceaselessly, even as they had done since before the coming of man to that far land. The tomb was built long before any human walked the face of the world, built by evil powers that had reigned unchecked in that unthinkably ancient day, when all the desert had been a verdant garden through which stalked great yellow giants, of small intelligence but of prodigious strength, that had built the tower and the city of the ancient and most powerful Lord Krang. And even before that Krang had been. He had been for eons, and in turn had come from a strange planet, it was told in tradition and runes inscribed in a dead language, the language of old gods, and in the time when dark magical powers had battled for possession of the universe. And Krang had won, Krang the Old One, the monstrous brown leathern thing that planned and ruled and malefically twisted the futures of worlds. But the time came that none had foreseen, and Krang the Ancient fell into a semblance of death, though his flesh rotted not, nor did his aspect change. So the people of the earth gathered together and conveyed him in a giant funeral procession to the enormous tomb carven from living blue stone in the side of the mountain, and they sealed him in and forever departed from his company. And the years and the decades and the centuries and the eons unthinkable came and went, and the sands swirled over the mouth of the tomb, and the door was obliterated, and none knew where Krang the Elder God lay in stupendous slumber. Then audacious mortals had unwittingly found traces of this mausoleum that even legend had discredited, and they had resolved to open it and seek the great body of the old thing that had laid unmoving since the world was young and green, lain while the prolific vegetation died and the sand crept upon the land and laid it into barrenness. It was said that there had been sealed up in Krang's tomb treasures that made avarice pale, and gems the like of which no longer existed, jewels from far worlds of the dawn of time, worlds that had died and returned again, and the strange manuscripts with the Slothian chants upon them, and other equally desirable objects. Therefore, many had set out to reach the far site of the old tomb, but few had reached it. Some had perished, slain by the hateful green devil things that lay beneath the surface of the sand in wait for unwary persons, and that sprang up to drag their victims to a horrible death. Some reached their goal and scratched and chipped the tight-sealed entrance, but it was as the gnawing of rats, and before they could do more, they had mysteriously vanished from human ken, nor had they ever been heard of afterwards. Yet this did not discourage others from emulating, for the desire for power will lead men far, and power there was in the tomb. So again, men were engaged in laboriously chipping away the obstruction and making slight headway, when one of their members chanced upon an orifice in the rock into which he thrust his arm curiously. Beyond he touched something, and lo! The great door grated outwards, inexorably, ruthlessly, and ground him horribly into the stone sill, leaving naught save an unpleasant smear of brown. And a dank smell came forth, and the door was opened. Paralyzed, the survivors did not act until it had swung firmly back into place and was immovable, save by a repetition of the catastrophe. So, though they could spare him ill, the others forced one of their brown slavemen from distant Leek to do this suicidal act, and he whimpered and would have not, but they discouraged this by subtle and hastily improvised tortures, and he eventually complied. They stepped delicately over the smear and caught the door, placing an obstruction in the way so that it might stay open. And then they entered, the first living things in that place since their race had appeared. The air was foul with the odor of a newly dried seabed, and the stench was unlike that of anything within their ken. All about the giant vault were great chunks of richly colored gems cut in curious facets, with cryptic inscriptions upon each. But the central object was the tomb of Lord Crane, where his great body reposed upon a slab of figured chalcedony. He was terrible to gaze upon, for even after the immense period, he still held the semblance of the horrifying aspect that was traditionally assigned unto him. And the explorers that had entered gathered around him for a moment in awe, but they were distracted by the infinite wealth that lay carelessly about. They became slightly affected by it, into a type of madness, and with repulsive amour and fetishism, they stroked the jewels and clung onto them. But what happened then, none can tell, for their two fellows standing guard beyond the entrance heard a peculiar sound that seemed as a slither, then a scream, then the door shut again, and although the obstructing block was not touched by them, it had moved. And Crane's tomb was again covered by the drifts, nor even after that brief glimpse of infinite wealth did any man of Fur venture near. For the Lord Crane had roused from his long sleep, and feasted